Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee. If I can just go through a few points to begin with, if you bear with me one moment. Okay, so please can I remind all participants that this meeting will be recorded and a copy archived for future viewing. Could all participants mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up if they can be seen on screen, or use the raised hand or chat functions? If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let the chairman or democratic officer know. If they have a webcam, then they should try turning this off, as this will help with broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth, so at least they can hear and be heard. So welcome to all committee members, cabinet members and officers. I think we've got the leader with us as well, and anyone watching live broadcast. I'm honoured to be the chair of this committee, and I look forward to working with you all and our cabinet members and officers. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to firstly appoint the vice chair. We'll also be given an introduction to the role and remit of Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee, including an overview of some of the key challenges that we're being asked to look at. Finally, we're being asked to consider the progress of previous recommendations made by the committee, and importantly, we're being asked to look at the committee's forward work programme for 2022-23 and consider whether there are any topics that we as a committee would like to prioritise. So if we can move to the first agenda item, which is to appoint the vice chair. Please can I have any nominations and seconders? Thank you.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Aviat, please.
I'd like to second that, please.
Thank you. Do we have any other nominations, please? I can't see any other hands raised. So if there are no other nominations, I would say that Julie Aviat is elected vice chair. So congratulations, Councillor Aviat.
Thank you to accept.
Okay. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Everyone's present, Chair, so no apologies.
Okay, lovely. And if we can look at the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of April 2022, do I have anybody to sort of, are they all the minutes correct, is what I'm asking? Yes. We have a lot of new members.
Who was on the committee?
I'll propose them as correct.
Thank you. So if people are happy to accept them, we'll accept those and move on. On agenda item 3 of 4, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No?
No.
Okay, so before we move on to agenda item 5, I think the Cabinet member Mark Wilson would just like to introduce himself, so we'll just give him a couple of minutes so he can introduce himself. So if you'd like to go ahead,
thank you
Councillor
very much.
Wilson.
Thank you very much, Chair. And it's been a real privilege to go to this committee. I mean, obviously, I'm a new cabinet member, so try and treat me not too roughly. But some of you know me for a long time. I'm well aware of that. And I go back to 2004, and I was a member of the predecessor committee for this, was the Economy and Environment Scrutiny Committee. So if I do call you that, and I know you're not that title, you're now the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee, I apologise, all right? But sometimes I do go back and I'm not totally up to date. But in terms of what I do, in terms of this portfolio, I have 2 dimensions to this. But one dimension I will focus with this committee, and that is neighbourhood services. OK, and obviously I'm accountable to this scrutiny committee in terms of my actions and what I do. And of course, in terms of the reports that I front when it goes to cabinet as well. My main responsibilities in terms of neighbourhood services are things like roads, for example, including potholes. And I suppose we all want to discuss potholes at some time. And the other thing that I'm responsible for is waste, including garden waste. Now, I was really pleased recently that we issued that communique to all councillors And it was, from what I've seen by the feedback from many councillors, including some of these on the committee, is very favourable. And I am very glad to report that I've been around Penarth today and I've seen hardly any green waste left behind. So I was really pleased. But, you know, if you find any pockets, please don't hesitate to contact the officers or C1V or whatever way you want to contact us. Please do. It's already been a really enjoyable but very busy portfolio. Not just I'm also in charge of roads, okay, but also I'm also in charge of sewers as well to a certain extent, although we've got to be careful about that because Welsh Water are in charge of all sewers in theory, but we're responsible for things like flooding risk and things like that. And I know we're doing some really good work in trying to mitigate and reduce flooding risk, especially in places like Surrey, Dinas Powys, and I know later on we're going to do some work in Wenbo as well. So, and obviously waste, roads is and drainage is my main sort of fortes in terms of this committee. And it's, you know, it's great to be here. And I've tried to be as many times as possible to give support to officers and to yourselves and to answer any questions. So thank you for allowing me that time, Chair. Thank you.
That's that. You're very welcome, Councillor Wilson, and I hope you will come back and see us on the committee as well quite frequently, because it would be good to have your input as well. So if we can now move to agenda item 5, we've got an introduction to the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee. We're lucky to have the 2 directors with us today. So if I can hand over to Miles Punter and Marcus Goldsworthy, they'll go through that. If anyone's got any questions, if you want to raise your hand to let me know if you want to ask a question, and we can go in order then. Okay, if you'd like to go ahead, please, directors.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll run through the presentation if I may. Miles will obviously come in at certain points if he needs to answer any questions, if that's okay with you, Miles. And I shall share the presentation. Now, it's not too long, and hopefully, you know, if anyone's got any questions, I either wait till the end, but happy to take them during the course of the presentation as well. So, right, hopefully that has shared with everyone now. Can everyone see the presentation? So what does our vision mean? So this is a scrutiny committee which forms part of four wider scrutiny committees dealing with various items across the council. This is part of our vision set by the corporate plan, which includes strong communities, an inclusive and safe Vale, an aspirational and culturally vibrant Vale, an environmentally responsible and prosperous Vale, and an active and healthy Vale. The plan is about bringing wellbeing alive, and it's about bringing the Future Generations Act into the heart of what the council does. So that looks at issues like long-term, the importance of balancing short-term needs with the need to safeguard the ability to meet our long-term needs, especially where things are done to meet short-term needs, which may have a detrimental long-term effect. Prevention, how deploying resources to prevent problems occurring or getting worse may contribute to meeting a body's well-being objectives or another body's objectives. Integration, the need to take an integrated approach by considering how our well-being objectives may impact upon each of the well-being goals and their other objectives and the objectives of other public bodies. Collaboration, how acting in collaboration with other persons or other bodies could assist the council to meet its well-being objectives or assist another body to meet its objectives. And involvement, the importance of involving other persons with an interest in achieving the well-being goals and ensuring those persons reflect the diversity of the area and the area the council serves. So you can see there that circle, which is in the middle of the screen there, it reflects all the various elements of the Future Generations Act. How do we deliver our vision as a council? Well, we have, I mentioned it before, the corporate plan with 4 well-being objectives, which is working for and with and for our communities, supporting learning, employment and sustainable economic growth, supporting people at home and in the community, and respecting and enhancing and enjoying our environment. And then we have the annual delivery plan, which runs every year, That has 6 key themes around Project Zero and climate change, building community capacity, dealing with hardship, dealing with care and support, transformation, and delivering infrastructure. So, moving on to the scope of this committee and council functions. Each committee and each scrutiny committee looks at issues relating to the outcomes we want to achieve and deliver, how we deliver our vision. To make the connections and to take an integrated approach to our work, a number of service areas are allocated within the specific remit of each of the scrutiny committees. This is the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee, and within that we have the remit of economic development, tourism, countryside, regeneration, waste management and cleansing, highway and engineering, grounds maintenance, planning, transportation, fleet management, cleaning and security, parking, environmental enforcement, and parks and resorts. So it covers a wide area, and particularly a wide area of doing things and where the public interact with us. And so the team behind those various functions, we've tried to put names for you. So the team behind function, this is the Place Directorate, which is my directorate. So I'm the Director of Place, Marcus Goldsworthy. We don't currently have a head of service in role, but we will be going out to seek one soon. Phil Chappell is the Operational Manager for Regeneration and Countryside. Ian Robinson is the Operational Manager for Planning and Building Control. And then we have 2 officers dealing with major projects. That's Mark White and Charlotte Rain. So those areas are the planning and regeneration side. And then the team behind the functions in Environment and Housing Service, obviously Miles, who's with us, Miles Punter, who's the Director of Environment and Housing Services. Emma Reid, Head of Service for Neighbourhood Services and Transport. Colin Smith, Operational Manager for Neighbourhood Service Operations, including Waste. Mike Clogg, Operational Manager for Engineering. Kyle Phillips, who is the Transport Services Manager, and Craig Handley, the Enforcement Manager. So those are all names, and obviously I don't expect you to remember all those, but those are all the names of some of the key players you'll need to speak to and need to be involved, and we'll come and speak to you at this committee around various issues as you go through your period as councillors sitting on the committee itself, the scrutiny committee itself. So that's it. It's a really quick presentation. We just wanted to introduce you to it. Quite happy to take questions now from anyone who's got any questions around the role of the committee and what we do. And Miles and I are here, and we're quite happy to answer those questions.
Does anyone have any questions at all? I haven't got any hands up at the. Oh, sorry, Anthony, Councillor Anthony Ernest. If you'd like to ask a question.
Could I just ask the 2 roles at the end of your penultimate slide there, Marcus? The major projects, 2 officers with the same title covering major projects. Could you just enlarge on that for us a little bit, please? Thank you.
Yes, sure, Councillor Ernest. So those roles were put in place to provide a service for various departments in the council, not just regeneration and planning, but for all council departments to help deliver projects and to help those projects come to fruition. So I'll give you some good examples of where the major project managers have been involved. They led on the 5 Mile Lane improvement scheme. They've been involved initially in the 21st Century Schools scheme, although that team developed into a fully fledged project team of its own. They've been involved in other major project delivery, including the Goods Shed, the Pump House. They've also currently involved in delivering an older person's accommodation scheme for Penarth. So their roles essentially are to ensure a project is delivered from inception right through to the point of construction and handover. They're 2 senior roles, 2 senior officers. They work solely on delivering projects for the council right across the council piece. So they could be delivering for housing, they could be delivering for education, they could be delivering for any one of the departments of the council. But they have a very important role.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chairman.
I think Councillor Champion, I think you had your hand up. Did you want to ask a question?
It was exactly the same question.
Oh, right. OK, then. So I had a sort of question, because obviously we've now got the Directorate of Place, which we didn't have previously, and we've also got changes to the Environment and Housing Services, which has changed slightly. I just wondered if you could just give a brief chat about your own directorates. Is that okay? If you just an overall thing. If I don't know which one of you wants to go first.
Shall I start, Chair? Is that so
yes, definitely.
Get a speaking part this evening, isn't it? That's all.
I know. Marcus has taken it all up.
I'm very grateful for Marcus. I'm presenting tomorrow to the different scrutiny committee. So good evening, members. I'm Miles Punter. I'm Director of Environment and Housing. So I'm actually in my 40th year, so I've been here quite a while. I've seen a few changes and things come and go, but essentially in terms of my directorate, there are 3 heads of service. We've got Emma Reid, who's head of Neighbourhood Services and Transport, Helen Picton, head of SRS, and Mike Ingram, head of Housing and Building Services. So in terms of this committee, the person you'll see most often in terms of heads of service is Emma Reid. Emma Reid runs the whole of Neighbourhood Services and Transport. And in that area, you've got Colin Smith, who's been mentioned before as operational manager, Mike Clogg, and you've got actually Dave Nevitt as well. And Dave is doing work on leisure, which is a different committee again. So in terms of this committee, you should be very proud coming on to this council if you're not already, because we are one of the best recycling councils in the whole of Wales. We're second only to Pembrokeshire in 2021 with a figure of 71% plus. And that is with only 2/3 of the authority on the new source segregated waste service. So Penarth is still yet to come on stream. So that's likely to be towards the end of this year, beginning of next year, when Penarth is involved in the source segregating system. And then we're hopeful that we'll, if not secure the first place, we'll certainly secure our second position. So, and we've in fact reached, because of our residents and because of the way they do recycle, we've reached the 2025 target a good 3 years early. So we're certainly not sat on our laurels. We've got a business plan for waste management, which I would encourage you to have a look at. And we've got a strategy for waste management as well, which you will be considering, because it's shortly to go out for public consultation and come through this committee, so you can see all the detail is involved in that service. That includes the building of a brand new waste transfer station at the Atlantic Trading Estate. So those of you that have been to the Household Waste Recycling Centre in Barry will see that huge structure behind, perhaps wondering what it is. That's our building, and that's where we'll be sorting recycling at the end of this year when that's finished. We essentially will sort all our material in 2 sites, the existing site in Cowbridge for the Western Vale and the site in Barry for Penarth and Barry. And we're looking to source all Wales markets, but certainly all UK markets for all our recyclate. So we're pretty well ahead of the game in terms of Wales, because we've been supported really well by Welsh Government, because we're essentially following Welsh Government's national policy for waste management. A couple of big issues for us in that area. One is we need to secure a new household waste recycling centre for the Western Vale, because the one in Llandau is basically past its best. So we've secured some land. So we'll shortly be purchasing some land on a trading estate in Llandau. We don't quite have the money yet to build the full funds to build that site, but we're hopeful again to have more support from Welsh Government. So we've got big plans for the Western Vale, as well as the new site we built a few years ago in Barry. The other thing we're going to be doing over the next 12 months is we're introducing new recycling arrangements for homes of multiple occupations, so flats and blocks of buildings who have difficulty storing our recycling equipment because they've got no internal storage. So again, through this committee, we'll be talking to you about the ideas we've got for that, and we've got money from Welsh Government again to support us in that arrangement. And that essentially is going to be a number of bring sites which are close to those properties where people can deposit their materials, similar to what you see on the continent. Because that's probably the best way for those who want to recycle to enable them to do so. So that's going to be happening over the next 12 months. As I say, your biggest role, perhaps this next 12-month period, is to have an input into the waste management strategy, which has been agreed by Cabinet in principle, subject to consultation. So this will come back through your committee, a really hefty document that sets our next 10 years plan for waste. So that will come through this committee. The other issues I want to raise with you, highways, you knocking the doors for the elections, you would have probably had your ears burnt a little bit by people complaining about potholes and the like. So it is always an issue for us at the time of the year when you were canvassing, because that's when we're not actually putting any resurfacing down because of the cold weather. We start to surface in the spring and summer. So you'll see a lot of activity around the areas now. This year we're spending over 2 million on resurfacing. We need to spend around 2 million to 2.5 million every year to retain the highway asset in a decent state of repair. And you will notice over the summer that you will see the surfaces improving. Unfortunately, then over the winter period, you get the dip with the rain and the ice, and you get the surface breaking up. In that area, we generally need more money from our national government to support us in improving highway routes. We don't have enough money as a council. No councils do. We need more money from Welsh Government, and they have been very good in the past, but we do need as much as we can get in terms of highway surfacing, because we have a fairly significant backlog. And we'll shortly be taking a report to Cabinet, which is on the 3-year surfacing plan. We have a 3-year schedule for our surfacing programme, so that will be going to Cabinet very shortly. The other issues that you may have a great interest in, car parking. We've just put our first automatic number plate recognition system in at Ogmore by Sea car park. It's not actually fully functioning yet because we're going through a process for the rates of payment. You've got to publicly consult, so we're in the middle of doing that. But all the technology is in. I was sat looking at the screen yesterday, seeing the reg numbers of cars going into that car park in real time and going out of that car park in real time. So the data from ANPR that you can use to better manage parking in your resorts is really, really impressive. And hopefully we can come to this committee at some point in the next few months or just after the recess and take you through the ANPR arrangements, because we've also got plans to install those similar facilities at Barry Island. They tend to only work and pay for themselves in car parks of large volume. So I know Marcus is also looking for them at the country parks as well, essentially going ticketless and using the technology. I don't think the other areas. Enforcement is another issue that's a big issue for this committee. So we've got a couple of high-profile court cases going through. You may have seen a few recently for fly tipping. There's a few different types of fly tipping. The ones that we tend to take to court and throw the book at are those that are commercial and they're depositing deliberately in this area. And we will pull all the stops out to deal with those people. We see a lot of fly tipping on private land, which isn't our responsibility. But if we do have the landowner's permission, we will work with them to again prosecute those offenders. Other than that, we tend to use the fixed penalty notices. And we use them for residents who offend, who fly tip and that sort of thing. So in that area also we do civil parking enforcement. So the old traffic wardens, if you like, they're called civil parking enforcement officers, and we employ them and we enforce that directly. We don't do that by a contract. We also have a camera car, and the camera car enforces certain restrictions on the highway. Not as many as you think. But essentially it was brought to work outside schools to protect pupils, because there's a lot of parking errantly outside schools. So that's been really successful as well, that camera car. So you might see that buzzing around. It does zigzag junctions. It does WL lines that have the pips on them. It can do them. It does loading bays. Certain restrictions it doesn't do. It won't do residential parking restrictions. It won't do standard WL lines, but it's a really valuable asset in conjunction with the enforcement staff. And then perhaps the last one, which is important as well, is street cleaning and basically keeping our highways tidy. There's never enough resource for that, but we have got some really good connections with community groups. One of the things you'll see that we're doing over the next 12 months and perhaps longer is engaging better with community support, with groups like Friends of Barry Beaches, and there's too many to mention, but there's such a good effort put in by the community volunteers to assist us. So we're having to rely on them more and more as money gets tighter and tighter. But that's something that we'll be bringing through this committee, because we're working on an environmental strategy that we want you to have a look at. That will probably be later in the year or early next year. So that's a bit of a whistle stop of the issues in my area. It's a significantly large area. Or flooding was mentioned. That's another one that comes under me. Just to explain, the council isn't responsible for flooding per se. It's a lot more complicated than that. But we are responsible for providing a flood risk management plan, which essentially says where our high risk areas are. And we have to provide that, and we have to show that to Welsh Government. And then the funding we received basically is predicated on what's in that plan. So we've done some excellent work over the years in flood risk management. And Clive Moon, who's our senior engineer, will come and talk to this committee. He's a very interesting presenter, much more interested than me. There's a lot more than me about flooding, but it's one of those issues, flooding, that's devastating if it affects you. So those members who've been involved with me in the past, dealing with the public, we try and get on the ground really quickly to provide support. It's not our responsibility, flooding, as I say, it's a complicated matter, but we take a community leadership role in it, very much being there at the front, trying to advise residents on what resources they can tap into. So you're probably going to see me a lot, as you are going to see Emma and the rest of my officers. It's a really good place for us to discuss items. We like to be challenged. Because you're the people with the ears to the ground. We're not necessarily. You were elected to be there, so don't think for 1 minute if you ask questions, if you push us, if you go down a different route, that we're going to be offended by that. We welcome that challenge. So that's why we like to come. We don't always come at a very senior level. You'll see other officers coming through because we give them the opportunity to present to you, because it helps them form their career progression. But we do like decent input. So don't ever think, oh, I'm not going to say this because I did. You say whatever comes into your head, you say it, because you may not think it's relevant, but it often is. So and I know Marcus is of the same view as me. You've got something you want to say, that you say it, and we'll respond as best we can. If we don't have the answer, we'll get you an answer, and we'll respond in writing within a day or so of you asking the question. So I've always enjoyed this committee. It's always been an interesting ride. We've taken some seriously big issues to this committee, and we welcome the challenge, and we welcome your input, because without you, the effective policy isn't best formed. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Miles. That was really interesting, and a whistle-stop tour indeed. Councillor Driscoll, did you want to ask a question before Marcus speaks?
Yeah, just a quick one.
Yeah,
thanks for that, Marcus. Luckily, I do think before I speak, and I don't say the first thing that comes into my head. But there you go. Yellow lines with pips. What's that? And what's the difference between yellow lines with pips and yellow lines?
Yeah, you'll see yellow lines that have a double yellow line on them, or a single yellow line. It means no stopping at any time. So disabled badge holders can park on double yellow lines, but nobody can park on the ones with the 2 pips on. So there's some in Penarth, which would cause some consternation with some people, because they don't necessarily understand what they mean. But if you look at the highway code, you'll see there's not just yellow lines. There are yellow lines that are absolute restrictions, and they're donated by 2 dashes every so many meters.
Okay. So does the cameraman or enforcement car just drive around taking photos and booking people that parked on ordinary yellow lines, or just the pips?
No, essentially we use it for loading bays and schools and zigzags. It's got a computer database within it that understands where those areas are, so it's an automatic process. But it can do the ultimate restrictions, but anything that requires a waiting period, and in WO lines, if we enforce someone on foot on a foot patrol, there's a waiting period, and it can't do those. And similarly with residential parking, it wouldn't be able to see the residential sticker in the windscreen, so we don't do those areas with a camera car. So it's quite specific what it could do. So it's essentially a support vehicle for the patrols on foot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Marcus, would you like to do a whistle-stop tour of your directorate as well, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so some members may or may not know, Directorate of Place is a relatively new directorate, formed only a couple of months ago. We are at the moment just trying to fill some roles in the directorate. So there aren't some people in place yet, but just to sort of give you a very whistle-stop tour of what we actually cover. So we cover areas such as planning, which I've mentioned, the planning system itself, planning committee, but also the local development plan and the forthcoming development plan review, local development plan review. So that's quite can be quite a contentious issue going forward. I'm not going to go through that now with you, but there will be, I'm sure, numerous reports coming to you as a scrutiny committee dealing with that local development plan and local development plan review, and that will take around about 3 years to be completed. So it's going to be an ongoing process which takes some time. Outside of the planning side of things, obviously economic development and regeneration is key to some of the other things we do, looking at town centres, developing action plans and master plans for growth as part of that role. More widely working with the region and Cardiff Capital Region to secure economic schemes and economic growth. That's something we've done since the formation of the Cardiff Capital Region, but obviously now we are moving into a new period with the creation of corporate joint committees, which essentially creates another layer of local government above the council. And we will be having to work very closely with colleagues in the Cardiff Capital Region and the subsequent corporate joint committee for that area to maximise the benefits that will bring to us, particularly around economic development, transport, and other areas around climate change as well. I mentioned climate change. Climate change is something, and the lead on climate change is something that the Place Directorate will be doing, and we will be looking to bolster our resources around that area. We currently also have country parks and deal with issues around the country parks and ecology, and of course the nature emergency which has been declared. Some of the other areas which we've taken on very recently is dealing with the United Kingdom government directly around funding opportunities. Obviously with Brexit and leaving the European Union, some of the funding opportunities that came from Europe have now gone, but have been replaced by opportunities from the UK government, such as Levelling Up and the Shared Prosperity Fund. And we will be looking to submit bids to access that funding under a number of different areas. The Levelling Up Fund is very much a specific fund aimed at capital projects and delivering those before spring of 2025. Shared Prosperity Fund is a more wide-ranging fund looking to replace European funding, but not in a like-for-like way. And again, I'm sure we will be bringing reports to you around the Shared Prosperity Fund in particular, and around what that means in terms of our communities, who can access it, what will be available in terms of funding. Over the next 2 years, it's approximately £14 million, but of which 2 million will be spent on employability and training issues. But it's or not done particularly well with European funding. And so that's something we will have that perhaps we didn't have before. We will be working with colleagues around region. So something that the Director of Place will be looking to do is to develop a strategic transport plan for the Vale of Glamorgan, and working with our regional colleagues around that and linking up our communities to ensure that everyone can access employment opportunities and other opportunities throughout the Vale. And also we have created an investment fund which we will be looking to use to maximise opportunities again for our residents and also for the council in terms of creating employment opportunities and opportunities for development, as well as opportunities for renewable type energy developments too. So something we're looking at the moment is how we can maximise the council's assets to use things like solar power, wind power, and other options around renewable energy. We work with colleagues in Welsh Government around the airport master plan and the airport planning process, but also Transport for Wales around access issues and trying to encourage them to develop some of the opportunities in the Vale, in Penarth, in Barry and beyond. And we also look at rural planning and rural communities and rural economic growth. So looking at opportunities around the growth of some of our more rural communities, and areas. Some of you will be aware that those are at the very heart of what we do. We hope the Shared Prosperity Fund will replace the former Creative Rural Communities Fund, which came from Europe, and we'll be looking to ensure that we can secure as much funding as possible to help our rural communities. I'm just looking to see if I've got it. I think I've covered most areas, so apologies if I haven't, but I'm sure I'm happy to take any questions if you need any answer.
Oh, thank you very much, Marcus. Does anyone have any questions for Marcus? Not at this moment, we don't, Marcus, but I think that was very comprehensive. I don't think. Oh, sorry, I've got Councillor Ian Buckley would like to ask a question.
I do apologise, Marcus. The only thing I wanted to ask him with your transport plan, I know Miles said about the rolling plans for renewing the roads and stuff. Have we got anything similar for the pavements? Because when we were knocking doors, there was a lot of people saying that not just uneven pavements, but for less ambulant people just being pushed in chairs and stuff, they're not smooth. And I know it's not our fault or your fault or previous administration's fault. They've been dug up by all the utilities and different cable companies and all sorts of people. But I didn't know if there was a plan for reinstating pavements alongside the roads.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Actually, that is Miles's area, but I mean, before Miles comes in, that's fine. Miles, I'm sure, will tell you about some of the work we were doing around the utilities, trying to make them repair things and give us advance warnings before they did things, because obviously one of the key problems we were getting was utilities going into new surfaces, new pavements, new roads, and digging them up straight after they've been replaced. So I don't know. Sorry, Miles, I'm stealing your thunder there. I'll shut up now.
Yeah, Ian. Yeah, it's a good point. We are a lot more keen now on utilities. They have the ability to open up the carriageway because they're utility companies. They have the rights to do that, but they employ contractors and sometimes their work isn't as good as it should be. So we have a team of people who go out and check their work at various periods after it's been constructed, and we will fine them if it's not up to standard. Yes, we do have alongside the carriageway renewal programme, we have a set of money set aside for footways. Again, it's never enough. And it depends where you live, how bad the problem is. Penarth is particularly bad because of the very old street trees and the effects that's had on footways. So we do have a plan for doing work on footways, and again, it'll be in the report. There's never enough money. I think one of the things we also need to do perhaps is to do a bit of an education campaign, because a lot of people feel that if a footway slab is snapped, then we should repair it. Now, we have a deviation criteria. So we have a figure of 20 millimetre for footway. So if that crack depth between the higher and lower point is less than 20 millimetre, then we won't repair it. So, there's a good side and a bad side, I suppose, for publicising those figures, because there are some people that may well take advantage of the fact that we've published the figures by which we repair footways. But essentially, I think it would be better to get that information out so that you're not taking calls from people saying, well, there's a cracked paving slab there, and you can say, well, I'll refer you to the council's website. It tells you at what point the council will intervene, because all our footways are inspected at 6 monthly intervals. So I think we need to do an education piece of work. We also need to do some more physical work. Ian, I think you're right. We recognise that there's some money, as I say, in the budget for that, but it won't be enough. But we will, you will see some work over the next few months or so.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you both. Cheers.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Julie Aviott would like to ask a question.
Yeah, thanks. While we're on the subject of the streets and pavements, I've had a few complaints about there's not enough drop curbs. I'm just wondering, I know it all comes down to money, but I'm wondering if that's something that we've got in the pipeline, extra drop curbs in strategic areas, not, main roads and stuff. I'm just wondering if that's something that we'll be looking at in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, we do, Julie. We've got them in where we know there are issues with people gaining access to sort of visitor areas or shopping areas, but we would encourage members, if they've got a resident within their ward who's having difficulty from where they live getting to where they want to go, to let us know, because we don't always pick up where the disabled people live and where they want to go. So that sort of intelligence is really good for us. So we'll see if there's alternative routes for that person. But if there's not, and they need to get to a certain point and they're struggling because of the curb height, then we'll put that in the programme to do that work. We do have them in areas where you'd normally expect them to be, sort of close to town centres from the shops, from the residences nearby. But often we get a call for someone who's saying, well, have a look at my street. And then when our engineers go out there, you see actually there's a real problem there. So I'd encourage you to raise those issues with us direct, and we'll send someone out to meet the disabled person and go through the routes with them. We've done it quite often, and then put in the crossings to enable them to get to where they want to go. We haven't got the money to do everything everybody wants, but we certainly will put it on a list, and we'll do it when the funding becomes available. But if you've got that person's name and address, Julie, then we'll happily go out there and meet them with you, and then do the route and see what they need, and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you, Miles.
Thank you very much. Do I have any other questions from any other councillors? I can't.
I've just one question.
Oh yes,
about the street tree programme. Is that Miles or Marcus?
I think it's Miles.
Miles, okay. So question really is, Miles, thank you very much. I believe you're developing a street tree programme, and as you've mentioned already a moment or two ago, there are a large number of elderly trees in Penarth, in a number of the roads. How far advanced are you on presenting that report to Cabinet, and then obviously then to committee subsequently? Thank you.
Yeah, we have a draft, Anthony, and I'm working on it with Marcus's team, because Marcus has that area of green infrastructure in his portfolio. So the tree strategy would be part of that document set. So I'm hopeful that will come in front of you this year. Anthony, you've been very kind in not mentioning the fact that you were talking to about a tree strategy with me when you were last on the council.
Absolutely.
But it's something that we have to get right, because we don't have never-ending funds. You'd appreciate that. But we've now got the added problem of ash dieback, which will be an addendum to the strategy that we're producing. So I'm hopeful that will come through this committee, as I say, this year. It's not going to deal with all the issues that we've got, because we don't have all the funding we will need, and we will need a lot of support from people like the Penarth Society and other groups who are undertaking tree inspections for us, and have been really helpful. But we will have to start going street by street, dealing with these issues that we've got, because often what's happened is the trees in Penarth are past the age they were ever expected to be in that street. They're still alive, some of them barely, but the damage they're causing. So I think, what we need to do with those trees that are basically dying off is to remove them, replant them with a more suitable species in a caged system that doesn't cause the same heaving problems that we've had with those trees in the past. Then we've got another 100 years or so not to worry about that particular street. So that's what I'd like to do over the next 12, 18 months, 2 years. Pick a street in Penarth and see what we can do with the community to at least do one or two streets, because Penarth is a particular problem because of the age of the trees in that area. But to answer your question, Anthony, hopefully, this year for the tree strategy, and of course it'll be something that'll come through this committee.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, I think a lot of this goes back to the old Glamorgan County Council, let alone South Glam. So we're going back quite some time. Thank you very much for that reply. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Miles. I have Councillor Ian Perry. I think you wanted to ask a question. If you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, it's just sort of following on from everybody else. I've got issues with hedges overgrowing footways, debris on footways, and the other issue I've now picked up in other parts of my ward are the lanes flooding and ditches not being dug and rectified. So there's three areas in different parts of my ward which have got lanes flooding, and can that be tackled?
Thank you, Ian. I think probably the best bet is if you could meet Nathan Thomas from my team out to see, because sometimes the sources of the flooding are runoff from fields, and it's not a matter we can easily deal with. Maybe a farmer changes the way he's growing his crop, or what the field is used for, and it exacerbates a problem. So I'd rather than give a general response, what I would encourage you to do is to ask Nathan, and I can get him to contact you to meet you out there to take you through those local issues, because it may be that the solution is with us, it may be that it's a field runoff problem, it may be some other issue. And in terms of overhanging highway hedges on that highway, the same thing. Tell us the areas. You know the drill, Ian, because we've dealt with this, you and I, in the past. We'll send letters out to those people. It's a bit of a laborious process, and ultimately, if they don't respond to the letters we send them, we'll do the work in default. So we're prepared to do that. So it wouldn't be a bad idea, perhaps, Ian, if you want to have a chat with Nathan, as I say, and he'll come out there and go through those issues with you on site to make sure that we can address them best we can. And as I say, what I'll do, I'll get Nathan to contact you sometime this week if that's acceptable to you.
Yeah, that's fine. And because we're a little bit done and it's been cut back, but again, whoever's cut it back hasn't cut it back sufficiently, and in parts it's still over. So, you know, if you've got a visual impairment and you're going along, it seems to be okay, and suddenly you've got something sticking out, so that it's haphazard what's going on. It's not been done with a lot of care and attention, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Ian, for that question, and that'd be good if you can speak to one of the officers about that and take that forward as well. Councillor Pamela Drake.
Yes, I've asked this question before. There was a trial set up in 2015 on the Heads of the Valley Road with self-healing concrete. Have you had any more reports on it, how it went? I have asked before, but I haven't seen anything yet. It was the Cardiff University were leading it, and I think there was a couple of other universities involved. And it was creating a system which senses damage and repairs. I think they use bacteria in it, and it binds itself. Very interesting.
Yeah, I do recall that, Sandra. I believe it relates to mostly structures, like bridges and concrete-based structures, rather than highway surfaces. So what I'll do, if you like, I'll ask my structures team to give you a written response on that. I remember seeing the trial. I've not heard it being widely used since, which might suggest it wasn't as good as they perhaps thought it was. But if you don't mind, I'll get you their written response on that, because they will know about the trial, they will know the outcome of it. But I think it relates to mostly concrete structures where they were cracking over time, and essentially what was happening is that these structures were healing themselves, and the cracks were being sorted out essentially. So I will get a response for you on that one if you're happy for me to do that.
Costain was involved, weren't they? Yeah. Oh, thank you. When I mentioned it before, the people looked at me, thought I'd gone barking mad.
Thank you, Councillor Drake, and thank you, Miles. I can't see any other hands up for any more questions for that. Thank you, both of you, for coming, doing the presentation, and then doing the whistle stop tour as well. I think that's really helpful for all as new members, and because also older members, where the directorates have changed as well since the beginning of the year and things. So that's really helpful. So thank you both, and I'm hoping that you both be coming here on a regular basis, as well as other officers as well. OK, if we can move to agenda item.
Sorry, Chair, could we just ask members to note the presentations?
Oh, yes.
Presentation. Is that OK?
Yes, are people happy to note the presentations? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. OK, bear with me one moment. Right. So we now go on to agenda item 6, and as the chair, I will take this, and this is the tracking of recommendations made by this committee. For those not familiar, as a committee, we will receive an update on a quarterly basis, reporting back on any progress and the statuses of recommendations that this committee has previously made. We'll also be asked to consider our forward work programme and to identify any particular topic or topics that we have as a committee would like to prioritise or look at in more detail. So beginning with appendices A to D, which relates to previous recommendations, just to highlight some key points there. So Appendix A, and hopefully you've all got that in front of you. These are the recommendations made in final quarter for 21 to 22 between January and March. Just to point out that all the recommendations for this quarter are completed, and to note that this committee made a recommendation to the previous cabinet to review the council's road safety policy and for there to be a greater focus on rural parts of the Vale. So this is something that will be considered by the new administration. Okay, so that's Appendix A. Appendix B, recommendations for the third quarter of 21 to 21, that's October to December. Again, showing as completed. So as part of the budget setting consultation for 22 to 23, the committee made several recommendations around the funding of cost pressures relating to statutory services such as waste, sustainable drainage and highway maintenance. It also asked for the capital bids within the area of the neighbourhood services for waste and highway maintenance to be prioritised to reduce risk and improve public health and safety. These recommendations were agreed by the Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee, which was the lead scrutiny committee for the budget, and referred the recommendations on to Cabinet. Cabinet was happy for the recommendations to be considered by the budget working group then when preparing the budgets for 22 to 23, and following that we did see an uplift in the budgets for those areas, but this was also on the back of a higher settlement from Welsh Government than was previously envisioned. So Appendix C, again completed, and this relates to recommendations made back in February 21 for the Natural Resources Wales to provide a presentation to the committee on flood alleviation schemes ongoing or being planned for the Vale of Glamorgan. This was on the back of a major flood incident that occurred back in December 2020, which Miles talked about previously, which badly affected Dinas Powys and Sully. Natural Resources Wales were able to attend the committee meeting held in February of this year. So we have attached a link to the minutes of that meeting for members to read. Yes, is that okay with everyone? Yes, okay. Okay, so moving on to Appendix D, this is the only recommendation that is ongoing and relates to site visits to the new waste transfer facilities. Initially, it was just for a visit to the Cowbridge site, which was delayed mainly because of COVID. But with the new transfer site opening soon in Barry, it was thought that we could programme visits to both sites over the next few months. So Gareth, as a support officer, will send out some dates for that for people to have a look at to see if we can go along, which I think will be really interesting. So please can I ask members to note the progress and agree the statuses of the recommendations in Appendixes A to D. So if I can ask people to note that, please. Okay, everyone happy with that? Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the forward work programme. And I think before I sort of start talking about that, I think there's Gareth wanted to jump in and say something about one of the titles on the work programme. Is that okay, Gareth?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to quickly mention that on page 2 of the forward work programme, there's an error on the report titles. It's shown as Neighbourhood Services and Transport Condition Inspection Regime. But that report should be titled Temporary Highway Trading Licenses, which relates to the placement of such items such as tables and chairs and advertising boards on the highway and pavements. So that is down to go to Cabinet on the 23rd of June. So we're expecting that to come to this committee next month. So if I can ask members of the committee for the work programme to be amended to reflect that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Chairman, could Gareth just quote the page number, please? Because
so yeah, it's page 2 of the work programme, which is
page 2 of the work programme.
To the top of page 2.
Right.
Top of page 2.
Appendix F.
Appendix F. Okay, right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Gareth. Okay, so now that we are moving on to the committee's forward work programme, we've got that amendment as well. This provides details of reports and items proposed to be considered by the committee over the coming municipal year, so June 22 to April 23. It's really important for us as a committee to agree our priorities for this year. So to assist us at Appendix E, which you will see the Cabinet forward work programme, which indicates the areas that Cabinet will be looking at over the next 12 months. Okay, so sorry, we have a draft of our work programme attached at Appendix F, which already shows when the budget monitoring reports and performance reports will be expected, which are fairly regular starting from July. It also includes a few other items expected, such as an update in July around Project Zero, which is the work the council is undertaking to be carbon neutral by 2030, and also the annual monitoring report for the Vales Local Development Plan in September. In addition, meetings in December are mainly focused on the budget, setting for the next financial year, and meetings in March are when we are usually asked to consider future service plans and target settings. So these months already have highly important report schedules. We already have a fairly full work programme, with February the only month where we currently do not have any items scheduled. I'm sure that other items and reports will come up as the year progresses, but this is a chance for us as a committee to consider whether there are any particular areas that we should be looking at over the next 12 months, and if people have any suggestions at all. Anyone got any suggestions? No. Okay, that's okay. I mean, there's quite a lot of newbies on this committee now, so there might be things that come up as we're going along. So members, they can complete a request for consideration form at any time, and then ask members to endorse the work programme at Appendix E. And as we haven't got any suggestions this evening, if we can just, you know, whether we are happy with the work programme. If I can just ask members if they are happy to accept the work programme. Sorry, Mark. Oh, yeah. Are you saying you're happy? No, you want to. You're happy. OK. So if everyone's happy to endorse the work programme and to accept the recommendations, is everybody happy to do that? Yes. OK. OK. Yes. So everybody accepts those recommendations for the future work programme. So thank you very much. Thank you. So now we go on to item number 7, which is any items which the chair has decided is urgent as part 2. Oh, Councillor Charles Champion, did you want to speak?
Yeah. Should we have looked at all of this before the meeting? Because I didn't. I wasn't told to. Right.
OK. So generally, yes, when you get notified of the meeting, you'll also get notified that the minutes are in the committee that's on your laptop, in the committee sort of triangular thing. So then if you look at those and just look through all the minutes of that, and you would look at the forward work programme. So everything that's included in the minutes is what you read through. Is that OK?
That's okay, yeah, but as a newbie.
Yeah, I know it is. I mean, this is only my second term, so it's just finding your way around to begin with. But any minutes that you get sent, everything that you get sent, you read through and stuff like that as well. OK. All right. Thank you. Sorry, I've forgotten where I was now. Oh, no. So I don't have anything urgent. We've got nothing in part 2, nothing in part part 2 as urgent. So that is the end of the meeting for today. Thank you everybody for coming along. Sorry that people have had difficulties getting online. And the next meeting is held on, I did see it somewhere. Sorry, do you have the date of the next meeting, please, Gareth?
Yes, Chair, it's the 13th of July.
13th of July. So, and we normally get notified a week before that the minutes will be there. So that's when you go on the committee tab on your desktop and have search for it and read all the minutes then.
Sorry, Chair, it's the 12th of July. My apologies.
12th of July.
12th of July.
Okay. All right then. But thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for people who participated, and hopefully we'll have less stress-free meeting next time when people are trying to get on and stuff like that. But thank you everybody for coming along today, and thank you for the directors as well. Thank you. Good night everyone.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.